Hi, today I'm going to talk to you about the accusations of Governor Cuomo. I'm going to start doing, this is ridiculous. This gets in also to my defense on Prince Andrew. This is the same type of thing that's going on from the feminist. So I'm going to get into all of this. I'm not going to do another blog of hundreds of pages. I've been doing Prince Harry's as well. I still haven't finished that. But I just got other stuff that I'm working on. And this, I'm actually gonna do something a little bit fun. I'm gonna do a card game. And this is coming from the feminist. So I got all sorts of cards here. Here are women in history, but I've changed some names, and this gets into the feminist movement. But I also am going to get into this Declaration of Independence, founding fathers, John Dickinson and John Paul Jones are in my family tree, and I use a lot of them in my argumentation. So anyway, I'm going to go through the Machiavellian, I guess you can't see that, the Machiavellian Games of everybody in Washington and how it's all interconnected. And believe me, it's the right as much as the left. Governor Cuomo has been sold out by the Democratic Party. My advice to him is to go to the Libertarian Party. They got a good platform. They just need a really good leadership. My only problem with the Libertarian Party is voluntary taxes. We already have that system. The name of the game is just be a scumbag, get into power, change the rules of the game, get the legislature to get all these laws passed, so you hire scumbag accountants and lawyers to find the loopholes, and you can do anything you want and you're not paying taxes, while the poor schmuck at the bottom of the chain, has to pay his share. So everybody needs to pay their share. So that's really the only place that I diverge with them. I think I convinced them that voluntary tax systems are not working within the paradigm that we have. So what I want to get into first with Governor Cuomo is thank you so much, Governor, for highlighting this is a due process issue. And that's what we got to focus on. I mean, I've been working on violence against women and human rights violations for 15 years. My case in Spain, which was from 2007 to 2012, the idiots finished it, but I knew they were hanging me out to dry from the beginning, and I got into the Machiavellian game plan, and I'll show how I shuffled my cards there. That all of my documents on that is warondomesticterrorism.com. But I set them up, and anyway, I won't get into that. I'll get into that later. You can find all sorts of stuff. But my case in Spain challenges the second jurisprudence on violence against women as human rights violations, González Carreño versus Spain, 2014 CDOC case. The first case was Carrie Bettinger Lopez was the lead counsel. Then she went and got in bed with the Joe Biden as the advisor to the White House on violence against women or something. But anyway, she was a lead counsel on González Linehan versus USA. That was the 2011 case. Now, the American government in that case, and it wasn't, accepted, was that they didn't have control, therefore jurisdiction, over courts at local and state levels. And I told the ladies, who's already been in the game coming back in 2009 to the states in DC, with the other activists and demonstrations and committees and meetings and oh Lord, it's just a round table. So I said, my goodness, ladies, come on, let's go. If the American government is claiming that they don't have control, therefore jurisdiction, under the state level courts and the local level courts, well, their raison d'etre ceases to exist. We can challenge the entire government, American government, on this one. Let's go. And that's when I find out Gary Givetti Lopez, who I've been sending emails along with a whole slew of other people. Let's submit, let's challenge this stuff. Set it all up, and not only set up my case, but all, anybody else who came to me. James Ryan, hopefully you'll win, and stuck with Caroline Kennedy in there. Oh my Lord, when I saw that Governor Cuomo had been married to Carrie Kennedy and divorced, and apparently he didn't like Carrie Kennedy's friends too. I'm like, see, that's a point in Kumo's favor, because I know some of the everybody in Washington knows about the Kennedys, and this is Ethel Kennedy's daughter. So, okay, I won't go into that. That deviates. I'll get into the other with the other presentation. I'm still working on preparing all of my cards. I'm going to do like a war. But believe me, the cards are stacked in my favor. They've castrated the men, so I get all of the kings, and everybody for the past 15 years. I'm like, don't you realize that aces are not just ones in this game? They trump everything else. And you keep on throwing me out and throwing me out and throwing me out and throwing me out aces all over the freaking place. I'm just like, okay, let me stick it there up my sleeve. And when we get to the end of the line, and you people are going to go, what? Idiots that they got run in Washington is incredible. So anyway, let's get back to Cuomo. First thing, the book deal. Okay, there was apparently that, part of that or a portion of that or something was done in his office on taxpayers, dime. I'm like, because you can look at the case that I've built against the IMF, where I worked for 7 years on workplace bullying and intellectual property theft, because I got wrongfully terminated twice, but I can't find lawyers to take them to court. But anyway, I'm like, you got to be kidding me. This is absolutely rampant. And the worst case that I saw of this, 2015, a book, Fishing for Fools by Akerlof. And there's somebody else, I forget. Now, Akerlof is married to Janet Yellen. Now, when I saw that book, I saw it was coming out. And so I went to his, launching of it and presentation at the IMF. It was at the IMF. And I was like, wait a second, because pretty sure it was Christine Lagarde who presented it, or presented him, had said that he had been employed by the IMF writing that book. Now, that was my understanding. That would have to be, totally verified, but that was my understanding when she said that. And I'm like, wait a second, this guy is writing this book, and, these are global taxpayers, it's not just Americans, are paying for him, there. I'm sitting here doing all the work, looking at all the stuff you guys should be looking at, and my seat warming job that you have me in as a secretary. And you keep on discriminating against me and passing me for every job position that I'm more qualified to do than anybody else in the place. And you're paying this guy all of this money. Who's getting the profits from this book? I'm not sure, but I'm like, wait a second. So I would say that was the first, oh, and one thing, when I went to the presentation at the IMF, everybody was just getting in line to get their signature for the book so they could stick it on their coffee table and show everybody how intellectual they were. Believe me, I'm very interested in that book, but has Janet Yellen ever read it or listened to what her husband has to say? Because the Fed, the central banks, well, that's a whole other can of worms. So I'm like, wait a second, this guy is working 24/7 probably during COVID. I'm very interested in the book. I think it's, one of the few out there that has some merit to it. And yeah, maybe he there were copies done or there were things done on the 9-to-5 job, but also he's doing a hell of a lot of stuff. So ladies, if this is the worst that you can pull out, let's open the Pandora's box, because this is a problem that just is, I got a terrace back here. I've got hundreds of books that I've read, some of them more thoroughly than others, and a few others that I have to read. And you can see on War on Domestic Terrorism, that was my bibliography of what I read until 2015. But then I did presentations on Dark Money by Jane Maher, the Rise of the Fourth Reich, that's Jane Maher's, the Narcissism Epidemic. Oh Lord, I'm overhauling the map on that one. You can't just say narcissists and psychopaths, because that's a lot what they become. Be nice, change your stripes. No, it doesn't work like that. So anyway, I did some presentations a little over a year ago on YouTube on that. So that I'm kind of like, oh my Lord, we're facing so many real issues that need to be dealt with. And I don't know if there's foundation to this or not, but this is like people stealing pencils from office in terms of what's going on. So anyway, bring in some concrete evidence, because I'm sorry, this guy was facing a shit show during COVID, and he's one of the few who stepped up to the plate. And that's why they want to take him down. Anybody who's competent, they want to oust them, believe me. The first headhunter I met with in 2009, coming back to DC in the States, she said, I'll never find you a job because anybody will be afraid in 6 months you'll have theirs. I'm sitting here unemployed. Yeah, headed towards living on a tent, but I don't know. God's always kind of come up with something. So then we move on to the nursing home thing. Now, I do not doubt that there was some, false fudging of numbers. But then let's look at everybody who's been doing that. And this problem at a much, much deeper level, because this is one of the things that I have been, you need to clean up your act and stop being, be more diligent, transparent, and accountable in your work. And, don't fudge the numbers. Because if it's found out, and it should be, that'll bite you in the ass. Then another thing with that is, for example, my case, domestic violence, the divorce case in Spain, it is of course under Spanish jurisdiction. And I never contested that. One of the State Department people said condescendingly, "Oh, lady, this is Spain. This is not the United States that's like so developed." By this time I've been, thrown into the cesspool. I was like, oh, wow, I bit my tongue on you, little bitch. I'll see you in court, in the international courts. But I was like, do not even try and take me out of the jurisdiction of Spain. Because the Spanish Constitution, which integrates the international conventions, the penal code, and their civil code, which actually covers marriage, is like utopian for this. Now, why is Women's League Worldwide and Baltar Garçon and Amnesty International Spain and all the rest of these human rights people there not submitting everything that I've argued? The Spanish defense was inadmissibility due to judicial error and a failure to exhaust domestic remedies. Well, I'm like, well, I demonstrate that judicial errors are not judicial errors. They're doing this bullshit on purpose. And domestic remedies, oh, Lord, I knew that was coming. I exhausted domestic remedies that you people didn't even know existed. I went all over the map on that one. I knew it was coming. So why won't anybody submit? I got thousands of names of lawyers all over the world that I've contacted. None of them will say, oh, no, lady, you don't have a case. They don't want to touch it with a 10-foot pole. Just submit and get on with it. The ones at the national level say, oh, yeah, as soon as you get your international jurisprudence, we're going to go to town at the national level. Let's go. Why Trump got into power. This whole thing with Afghanistan, Biden finally did what everybody had said that they were going to do, and they should have done a long time ago. Don't even get me started on Afghanistan. And, Trump had made the deal, Biden followed through, and look at the fiasco that's gone on. And believe me, we're going to have a shitload of fallout. So government agencies, that is the crux of everything I'm doing. We need due process in the courts, and when the courts are not doing it, you need your executive and legislative branches to oversee the court system and clean that up, because it's a freaking mess. Not just in the United States, but they are at the lead. And a lot of this gets into the war on drugs, the new Jim Crow, the war on drugs that has failed. It has brought in total breakdown in the rule of law. That needs to be eliminated. So, any fudging of numbers, unless Cuomo, this is another thing when I write my letters and I go up the chain of command. And believe me, I call the people, I said, did you get my correspondence? Did you get my correspondence? Or I send it certified mail. I always follow up. Now, the moment that somebody, I gotten up to the top by now, gets a letter from me informing them of the issues that I'm covering with them, their obligation to act under constitutions, penal codes, and I get into civil stuff as well, and international conventions, then, and they ignore me, then they can be held responsible. But unless one of these higher ups is informed about what's going on, and believe the game playing at lower levels is just as bad as at the top. And they're setting the example for the lower level people. And instead of addressing the problem, let's just hire some more idiots. The universities are churning them out a dime a dozen, so that's cool to come in here. I know, fresh meat for all the guys to set them up, like we did with Kumo. I'll get into that after a little bit later. So, unless, Kumo was involved in the actual cover up and knew about this, you can't hold him to account. Not under international, well, this doesn't really get into constitutional so much, but international conventions or penal or civil codes. That's why you need to have competent people in your organizations. I mean, the corporate world is just as bad as the government agencies, as well as the international development community. I mean, oh Lord, 70% of them need the pink slips. Another thing about the nursing home. Oh, and my favorite was my older sister, who said, "Oh yeah, Kumo was involved. I saw the links." Did you actually click on any of the links to find out if what they were, where the evidence was? Of course not. Nobody does. People are just putting all, click on the links, start clicking on the links, and you'll see either it's a trail to La La Land or nothing there. So if you're going to say something and declare something, produce evidence and facts, not just somebody told me. I saw the link. My favorite new one is the same as somebody told me. Well, who told you? And what exactly did they tell you? Okay. Oh, and another point with the nursing homes. When I got, of course, my focus has been on family courts. However, I did look at the penal system. That's why I know, what's going on with the new Jim Crow. In fact, one of the people that I contacted several times was Michelle Alexander, the author of that. And she's like, "Oh, lady, you're biting from an apple bigger than what I'm willing to chew." I mean, if lawyers got together, they would have a small army to well, you need to find lawyers with brains and balls. And as I told some poor woman many years ago, Facebook, can you please recommend a lawyer? Ask anyone out there, they'll say no. I said, look, finding a lawyer is like finding your Prince Charming. You gotta kiss a lot of toads to find your prince. But with the lawyers, in the meantime, you milk you for all your wealth. Women are going to the courts representing themselves and using animal rights legislation in the United States for their children, because animals have more rights here than our children's do. And I keep on saying, but ladies, we've got to fight instead of, oh, I'm going to learn and, how to go to the court myself. I said, we have to fight so that we have, first, always representation within the courts. Believe me, you'd clean up so much if you got that done. But you need to have some competent lawyers who know what the F they're talking about and something about law. Oh, let me be in my bonnet. So now, then also I looked at the forensic science, the forensic labs. CSI, Las Vegas, that apparently is a model one, and really CSI, the series that they did, excellent, special effects and graphics and all of that stuff that they were doing. But the rest of them, it's a shit show. Horrible. So, how do you want in the courts if you don't have a, proper forensic, labs, your evidence trail, that is worthless. But also I looked at elder abuse, which gets into the nursing homes. Now, this is a horrible problem, a horrible problem. And, you have it in the private sector because it's money-making business, in the public sector because it's not well administered, but it's horrible. We got it in foster care. They're trafficking children. This whole Obama, he grew up without a father, and his, I think it's called Taft. That's been counterproductive. That incited the foster care systems to bring more children in the foster care system and then traffic them into the adoption, because the states made money from the federal government. I mean, it's just, yeah, trickle down's working to our detriment. That's why we have an increasing income inequality. So, those are so much more important issues on the nursing homes rather than, attacking Cuomo on really something that my understanding he was unaware of. Okay, the Cuomo Bridge, his father's bridge. How many? It was in the billions on that one, I forget. Structural problems. Again, this problem is of epidemic proportions, not just at national levels, but international levels. And this is where, I go after particularly the jugular on World Bank, because that's, IMF and UN, but that's more under the domain, if you will, where the World Bank needs to take the lead, these public-private partnerships. I mean, you guys at the IMF, World Bank, and UN are just in bed with the government officials that you should be up there giving them colonoscopies. And you just smooge and cruise with them at Davos and World Economic Forum with all your zipper problems. I mean, this is then going after Prince Andrew. I was like, excuse me, I saw him up on the podium at the World Economic Forum. So when you want to use him to get publicity, oh, you're his buddy. But you got your hand. I know what's going on behind the scenes. Some of you have gotten your hand in with going after Prince Andrew, which, quite frankly, I mean, this is also, I'll go into this a little later, on Cuomo, his character, his family, and all of, and Prince Andrew, my favorite with him. He's a playboy because his nickname is Randy Andy. Now, the poor man, for the life of him, he doesn't know where that name came from, apparently. I'm like, ask your sister, she has to know. When I was at boarding school in England, the upper forms swooned over Prince Charles. The girls my age, it was Prince Andrew, and the lower forms, it was Prince Edward. And of course, Randy rhymes with Andy. So he got the nickname Randy Andy. And I was like, you guys, because I'm 14, 15 here. I'm like, I'm pretty sure he's probably a virgin. So this poor man got a name of a playboy when he was still a kid, because all of the British girls wanted to live with him. So, this is another thing, Virginia, I don't want to deviate. Virginia Giuffre, that's, that's got holes all over the map, just like Governor Cuomo stuff. So anyway, the Cuomo Bridge, let's, attack again. I have no doubt that there are some real serious issues there that need to be dealt with. And there's some, malfeasance, if not worse. But again, how do you hold this guy accountable unless he had his hand in the cookie jar, or somehow he knew about anything and is covering it up? So if those are the accusations, bring on the proof and the evidence. And also, all of these things shouldn't be launched in a public forum. They should go, this goes back, due process. I mean, you ladies, you feminists, this is one of the reasons. Well, wait a second. Okay, yes, you have the right to accuse somebody of something, but they also have the right to have those accusations looked at, just as you have the right to have those accusations looked at, which is not happening. Nobody wants to look at any evidence nobody knows how to look at any evidence. So they just go, eeny, meeny, miny, mo, pick a tiger by the toe and decide based on their biases, based on their, whatever, flip a coin, whatever. Okay, so that gets into the bridge. So the most damaging, of course, and which is being launched to really bring him down, is the sexual harassment stuff. Now, I went through all, a lot of it, and first off, I even put this on LinkedIn. My Lord, this man is Italian. He's Italian, Sicilian Italian. Let me send you to my Spanish family for a week if you're going to get upset. Because Cuomo, date un bis. Un beso. I speak French and Spanish, and we mix it up in my family. Date un beso. At a wedding or something, or hugs you. Oh, Lord, you wouldn't survive a Spanish wedding more than 5 minutes. However, as I point out as well, excuse me, all of you, Nordic Europeans who, whether you be the Brits or the Swedes or Norwegians or whatever, because you don't have any sun, you need to go. You like to go to vacation in the South because they are more free and, in Brussels, in Belgium, with the Belgian people, you're never sure they can 4 times, 3 times, 2 times, or once. You never know. Usually in Paris, they're a little bit, faster, and it's only once. In Spain, it's usually twice. And these are just cultural differences. And if you go to these countries or, frequent these people, you have to make certain allowances that these people just have other traditions. I mean, that's what cultural understanding and diversity is about. I mean, okay, when my young toddlers are being slobbered all over by ants, then I put a line down a little bit and say, get off and have a discussion with my mother-in-law about respecting boundaries of people from culture from both sides. But it is both sides. So I think that, okay, so that was at a wedding. The other stuff, he made me feel uncomfortable. It just, I was like, little girl, what the hell are you doing in the big world? I don't know. It really, this is my thing with the feminists. Wait a second. Stop sending these little idiot bimbos in, a secretarial position. I mean, fresh meat. And I mean, the narcissism epidemic has just created several generations of people who do not know how to deal with any situation whatsoever. These little girls need a lesson in sex education. I mean, I started working up on Capitol Hill at 17 years old as an intern. And, even before that, my father's, even as a child, I was around these, important people and important men. One occasion, I said, to my sister, we were young. I was like, he used me like grape. She's like, yeah. So you got it. And I started going on public transportation when I was 14 in England, by myself or with my sisters, whatever, even taking flights as a child. Okay, we had a flight attendant always, assigned to us. But I mean, some basics of what men and women want in this world and what it's all about. I mean, that's what adolescents and then teenagers should be learning instead of how to go shopping and put on makeup. And then, it's the boys need to be responsible just as much as the girls. And excuse me, all of the profiles that there are in Washington, they just rack up wife after wife after wife and have zipper problems all over the place. And each wife or mistress is 20 years, 10 years younger, 20 years younger. I think it's Chomsky, 36 years younger. So I'm like, well, why do you men have to have all of these young little girls who don't have a brain? Well, I know why it is, because you are not as great as you want everybody to believe. So you always need some young thing that'll giggle at your stupid jokes. So, the zipper problem in this town and everywhere. As an expat wife, particularly in Bogota, oh Lord, I knew who everybody was sleeping with. Everybody. So let's get out of the frat house paradigm that it is just a breeding ground for this. I mean, one of my things with Megyn Kelly and that whole stuff is, well, if you little ladies would stop sleeping your way to the top, the competent ones wouldn't be out on the street. Because, I'm like, I never had to sleep with anybody back in the 80s to get a job. And now that's what you got to do. I know I'm an old lady, but even, you know, if I was young, I'm not doing that. Wasn't going to do it back in the 80s, and I'm not going to do it now. And that was another thing. I mean, I used to get job offers all the time, no problem. And believe me, it wasn't because, you know, I was sleeping with anybody or doing anything else. People would go, God, you're a hard worker. And anything you don't know how to do, you learn. You're competent. Oh, I mean, God forbid we should have, you know, competent, hardworking people in the workforce anymore. So, you know, most of that stuff, it's like, how can you even come forward with this bullshit? And a lot of it, because believe me, you can look on my War on Domestic Terrorism, I've just got a synopsis of all of the reports that I've read on that. And a lot of that stuff is so scripted, it's not even funny. This is scripted from the feminist lawyers behind this. Now, you know, Gloria Allred, I saw her on, you know, in the Prince Andrew thing. She might have her hand in this. I don't know. I was labeled a mole when I was told that. This is back in 2009. But, you know, because the domestic violence industry is in bed with the feminists. And unfortunately, all of the activists are just getting on board on all of that partying and book deals and back to the book deals. That's why nothing ever gets anywhere. I threw up my hands in 2015 with all that stuff. So anyway, they're all in bed together. And so I guess the most damaging with, of course, is, and this is also the only thing that really, how shall I say, be of concern in terms of whether Cuomo should step down or not, or you know, something like that, which really has any kind of meat to it, is this one of you know, him fondling her or whatever. First, that also, when I looked at that woman and she did an interview and everything like that, that sounded very scripted from the feminist. Same with Virginia Giuffre. That's why also Virginia Giuffre, for example, you look into her, she was sexually molested around 9 years old or so, not clear whether it's father or an uncle. I'm not sure, but it was her father who first took her to drove her to Jeffrey Epstein's mansion to give a massage. Now, if my 15-year-old daughter or 18-year-old daughter comes and say, oh, I'm going up to this old fogey's, you know, old fart's mansion to give him a massage, and you know, pay me well, I'd be like, over my dead body you are. And I can tell you, I'm going to be down at the school and I'm going to be down at the police station tomorrow when I want an investigation of what this man is doing up there. See, that's where the women with their rolling pins going, you better get your shit together because it's not happening in my neighborhood. That's who you need to mobilize. So anyway, it just sounds very scripted, and it just, it doesn't fit with the profile of Cuomo, the certain comments, the certain things that these girls are saying that he said, just doesn't fit at all. And as I know, and I've been saying since the Dominique Strauss-Kahn case came out in 2011. Now that was the Sarkozy camp going after Dominique Strauss-Kahn. That was not the feminist. After that, it got into the feminist. Believe me, you know, the Ale ones, yeah, those are moves from the feminist. Now, there are people that need to be taken out and cleaned up. But see, they're just going after anybody and everybody. All they want is power and control and get the positions, get the power positions for them. And if you'll note, see who's taking Kumo's place. However, Kumo, good riddance. You want to talk? I'll explain to you greatly as why and what you're going to avoid with that one. And so good riddance. And you know, I'm sure this has been a real pain, but just look at it as a blessing in disguise. So that it doesn't ring true, that girl. So, you know, I can't find anything about her, you know, her background or anything she does. This is another thing. She's coming out there. Well, apparently, you know, Kumo was talking to her about she had been sexually assaulted in the past. It was a sexual assault victim, and that's how kind of the subject came out, because Kumo, I guess somebody, you know, in his family has had that happen. So, you know, he was just trying to be, you know, understand him. I'm like, oh my God, I have more people work with in Washington than the IMF or any place else. Had half of that, then we wouldn't be where we are. Because everybody just says to me, it is what it is. It is what it is. I'm like, well, back in the 70s and 80s, we had another expression. It was eat shit and die. We need to bring that one back. So, you know, that just that also is there's just a lot of things. So I'd like to know more about, you know, her, what's going on there with her. Another thing, go on my everything that I've written, the 1,000 pages that I've written, my websites and everything like that. There's one, you know, my story of what happened in Spain. It just, and it mainly consists of the judicial, you know, errors and everything like that. Of course, there are certain things that I have to include. But this is another thing that's pissing me off, is because you idiots won't move. I gotta come out there and tell it again, and tell it again, and tell it again. When I got into, you know, in Madrid, when I saw what the lawyers were doing, so of course I start going to the NGOs, the domestic violence NGOs, useless. Like, I need a lawyer. I need a lawyer who has something in his freaking head. Oh no, nobody gonna do it. No. I'm like, oh, okay. So you guys are just a front. And it was the Mujeres Separadas and Divorciadas. I forget the name of the woman. She'd you know, been around for, I don't know, 60, 70 years. Now, this was the third time I went down there. When she arrives from lunch, I'm out on the front, you know, steps of the building. She arrives, Madame, with her 3 ladies in waiting. And I go into her office to talk to her. And I see all of the photos with her shaking hands of all the ministers. I'm like, okay, I got the picture. I got the picture. I know what I'm up against with you people. Useless. Bullshit. So that, sorry, I'm deviating there. But you know, you know, so with this administrative assistant, just doesn't mesh. Then another thing with the administrative assistants, I want to point out one of my big beefs, and this is with the IMF Family Association. When I went in there, this is 2009. I'm like, oh, great, because running the office, I can't steal the job of the chair or anybody on the board, because you have to be the wife of an IMF board, you know, employee to be there. So I'm like, oh, okay. So also, my God, my whole global expat project is all about expat wives clubs and cleaning up all of the bullshit in there. So, you know, this was perfect. Well, I go in, and of course, the records, the administrative stuff, non-existent. So I spent the first 4 months, I guess it was, cleaning. I mean, had all of the old files, you know, the paper stuff that was cleaned up, and then putting together a filing system and an organizational system for the organization. How do you run an organization without competent and correct records? And nobody's doing it. It's a shit show. Patsy Geyer, the administrative assistant of former Manager Johnston, worked for from 81 to 85. I mean, I keep on saying, you give me 1,000 Patsy Geyers in Washington, D.C., I will clean this place up faster than you could even say boo. So the administrative assistants, the administrative functions are a bunch of seat warming, little game playing so-and-sos. And I got a whole slew of names. And this gets into the office managers, Adrian Theppa, Kate Phillips, Gina Peone, the HR departments. I want to see you all in court. Of course, everybody's, flipping out with their, violence and everything, because nobody can get justice through the proper chains of command. Nowhere. It's all a big joke. The ombudsman, got 4 ombudsmen. One is the NPR ombudsman. One is the Spanish ombudsman, Defensor del Pueblo. The other is ombudsman at the IMF. I forget, I got another ombudsman in there someplace. People should be ashamed of themselves. So this is all, it's all a bunch of smoke and no fire. And we got fires burning all over the frickin' place, literally and figuratively. And the game players are focusing on this stuff. Why? Because the man did a good job. And he was being considered for a presidential contender. Oh, Lord. Anything that brings you down more is being competent and people wanting you to put you into positions of leadership. I keep on quoting Lee Iacocca. Where have all the leaders gone? Where have all the leaders gone? I'm like, either they've been castrated or run out of town. So anyway, I guess that was, all I covered everything I need to. I hope I didn't go on too long. That I saw in the Cuomo case. So I covered these issues, but really what I want to get into using this case is the Machiavellian Games and how social networking, this is where Kerry Kennedy comes in a lot, and all the feminists, and Ethel Kennedy, and Nancy Reagan, and my mother, and CZ Guest, and so many others. Foxcroft is, check out my letters to Foxcroft. I mean, I'm sorry, I'm one of the most intelligent alumni that they have. Yet I'm ousted from a courageous conversation, which I couldn't care less about. I just did it out of good faith because I saw the email. But that's not going to sit pretty. And I tendered the offer, and it's like, no, we're not going to give you a voice either. I'm like, you guys were part of the naissance. I mean, Cornelia Guest. You all are following Cornelia Guest, the high school dropout, and the cocaine snorting high school dropout, yet the most intelligent alumni you had, who had to work her way through college, and evenings in restaurants. I worked in restaurants and bars, nightclubs in DC in the 80s. Capitol Hill in the morning, classes in the afternoon, and that was in the evenings. I saw it all. The only decent places, the only decent people in those places were the people who work there. My favorite was Paper Moon. They only had 2 stalls in the ladies' bathroom. When I go down there, I just look under, and if I saw 4 feet, I would go like, oh, I don't care what you're doing, but I gotta pee. You let me do my business, and then you can do your business, because I got a whole slew of people waiting for me upstairs, and I don't have time for this shit. Oh gosh. See, I don't know. People are the golden age of the golden age. I'm like, I don't know where you were, but I was around, and it wasn't so pretty. Lots of stuff there. But anyway, so I guess that's all. And the only thing that, again, thank you, Governor Cuomo, for saying that please let's focus on due process, because this is the issue that we should be focusing on. Is there due process? Is there due process? Any of these people are just, because believe me, the litigation that's being brought to the courts and the accusations to Trump is out of control, because there's no accountability. Well, I mean, that gets into my case against DC Landlord Tenant Court and my landlord in 2016, but that I won't go into. So thank you. I hope this highlights or clarifies some of the issues that are launched against him, and let's please use the discussion to redirect it where it should be. Everybody keeps on saying the discussion. Nobody will let me end the discussion. My favorite is Nancy Pelosi, when she sent me to the back of the line on the Q&A when I got up in her mom's Rising conference. This is the second time she sent me to the back of the line, because she didn't like my first question. Usually my questions are statements, sticking it to them, but they don't like it. This is the land of the free and the brave and freedom of speech. And they're trying to get me in a tent living on a street because they don't like what I had to say. Well, I keep on saying, you guys, if I end up in a tent on a street, I'm actually going to be sitting pretty, because by that time the raping and pillaging is going to start in the Northwest neighborhoods, and I'm better off out on the street. They won't touch me. What do you guys want? How many more dead and dying do we need? So anyway, stay safe. Oh, I guess I don't have my mask on. Hold on. So we are not out of the woods. I mean, I use these things also. I'm still on lockdown, so all I do is work from home or go to the grocery store or my walks. But these are cotton, and I can double them up and everything like that. When I go home, I throw it in soapy water. It saved me a fortune, which I don't have, in masks, and I keep them clean. And but please, we're not out of the woods, and there's still a lot of questions that need to be answered. But I don't know. Also, it's until the dust settles, you're in emergency mode, and everybody has to deal with the emergency it is. I mean, if the Americans had reacted like this at Pearl Harbor, I don't get my chocolate, I can't jet set. Oh my God, and the people in the community would have tarred and feathered them. So anyway, wear your masks. I loved it when Governor Cuomo said he went up to somebody in the park or whatever and was like, it's a face mask, not a chin mask. And his daughter was bad. See, I know the Southern Europeans, oh Lord, with the Spaniards. Sometimes you gotta, yeah, cool down. Even though you agree with them. So anyway, stay safe, wearing your masks, and all my best to you, Governor Cuomo. Believe me, you might learn some lessons from this. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.